talking about Pacific Raceway's Lucky Dog post-mortem. So we came out of that race with a nice second place victory on the Saturday 9-hour. Sunday we DNF'd. Well, we came in 13th, but we really DNF'd. Clutch broke with 40 minutes to go in the race, so that was pretty much the end of that. We didn't diagnose it until we got back here to the shop. So pulled the so actually symptomatically what was going on is driver reported a lot of vibration and a loud bang. Initially prior to that. And so we just told him to pull it over, and he got flatbedded into the pits. And then once he got in there, I fired up the car, sounded fine, drove around the parking lot, did some figure eights. We were, given our the differential problems we've been having, that was my first thought. And he was pretty positive that's what it was. So drove some figure eights in the parking lot, just 10 miles an hour, and everything felt fine. And then as soon as I got the RPMs up a little bit, there was a lot of roughness and vibration in the motor. And so clutch in, vibration goes away, even though I'm still coasting. So pretty sure it was a clutch transmission issue, maybe a bearing on the main shaft in the trans, or the clutch itself. So pulled the transmission out, took a look at it, and of course so we run a Tilton 7¼ inch single plate clutch, and it's a pretty light duty clutch overall. The entire clutch and flywheel weighs 13 pounds, so it's super lightweight. We don't have a lot of torque. We only have 230 foot-pounds of torque at the wheels, so the clutch can handle that just fine. And what actually ended up happening to it is it's a 4-paddle or 4-puck clutch. One of the entire paddles just sheared off of it, took out the pressure plate, knocked some ribbing out of the inside of the transmission bell housing, and so did a bunch of damage. So I got pictures over at Tilton. They were super responsive and shocked that it happened. And once we went over the complete setup of the car, how much power it has, how much it weighs, how we use it, they were a little concerned that we were using a single plate clutch for it, even though it's rated for the power. For example, our car is about 2575, 2550, right in there with full tank of fuel plus driver. So, say 2750 going down the track. And we go out and run it for 20 hours in the weekend. And I was talking to the engineer over there, and he's like, well, how many hours are on this clutch? And I'm like, about 120 hours. And he's like, so you just ran 5 24-hours Le Mans on a single plate 7¼ inch clutch, and you expected it to last? So that kind of puts it in perspective. But they've been super responsive and helpful, and so we're going to upgrade it most likely to a twin plate, not because it won't hold the power, but it gives you double the amount of discs to handle the shock loading, and because it's completely unsprung clutch, there's some pretty severe forces that go in there. And one of the things I noticed this weekend, we were having a fuel issue as well, and the nice thing is we have AIM PDM, so we were able to go back through the data and actually figure out what was going on at the track. And the neat thing about that is, so we're seeing fuel pressure drop off in the long straightaways, and we run a static 72 PSI because we're running an S54 motor with factory injectors. And so what we would see is it would bleed down to 40 PSI by the end of the straightaway, and air fuel is like 18:1. And so fortunately it was going so lean that it was basically just completely misfiring rather than burning the motor up. But it was severely limiting our power production and actually how fast the car was. So that was our first hint that something was going on. And so looking through the data after the 9-hour race on Saturday, we noticed that current for that same channel in the PDM that runs the pump exclusively was going down. And we have an Injector Dynamics fuel pressure regulator that has a flow indicator on it. And so we're seeing 0 delta P across the across the filter element. So there's no restriction there. And I would expect to see current go up with a restriction on the pressure side of the pump. So it looks like either the pump, which is an Aeromotive 340 in tank in our fuel safe fuel cell, either the pump itself is failing or the inlet to the pump is restricted or clogged or something like that. So we got to pull it all apart and see what's going on with that. So those are kind of our two things that are going on. But the reason I bring it up, with the fuel pressure falling off, when we get to the end of the front straightaway, you know, doing 142 miles an hour into turn 2, we'd go to RPM, you know, we're on the rev limiter in 5th gear. We go to RPM match for the downshift, heel toe it, and the pedal's just dead. The motor doesn't respond to the throttle blip. And so when we grab 4th gear, it's a pretty good shock load, you know, snapping the drivetrain back up to the matching RPM at that speed. So that made for some unsettling downshifts, and we were racing in the rain quite a bit, so that was a bit sketchy. But I think that perhaps contributed to the failure of the clutch itself, that high shock load on the clutch engagement. I don't have any data to back that up. That's just some, you know, intuition from 28 years of racing. But so we'll see. But long story short, I think we're going to go to tilt and twin plate just to distribute that load over a bit more discs and surface area. Their engineer thought we'd get roughly 500 hours out of one of those clutches in between services, so that's 2.5 seasons. So if we just conservatively every 2 years replace the discs and, you know, resurface the friction surfaces if needed, that should be fine, because we see about 200 hours a season. So that'll put us on the safe side of the mean time between failures. When the clutch failed, the paddle that came off is it's sintered iron on a metal puck, and so it had a bit of inertia, and it's a pretty durable piece. So that kind of, as I got spat out of the clutch, took out some ribs on the inside of the bell housing, and just did some mechanical damage in there. I think it will be recoverable, and you know, again, we don't have a lot of power, so we're not stressing that transmission case a lot. So I think it'll be fine, but it's just a bummer all around, because we weren't going to podium on Sunday. Sunday was 4 hours of torrential downpour and basically ice skating through puddles on the racetrack at 100+ miles an hour. So super scary, and then it dried out for the last few hours, and so lap times picked up and kind of got back to normal. But our wet pace was just not on with the guys that are fast. Teams like Purple Haze, they're in B class, and I don't remember what their lap times were, but they were probably 5-6 seconds a lap faster than us. So, you know, every 12 laps or so, we're getting passed by them, and they're down a class from us. But they have good drivers, really well set up car, and it doesn't have the power to compete with us in the dry, but in the wet, I mean, it just goes to show it's all about driving, and they have a good setup for that. So kudos to them. But yeah, I think we were back of the pack in A for Sunday, so it wasn't a big deal about getting on the podium or not. It was just more we wanted to finish the race and not have another failure. But it's all learning, and like I said, Tilton's been great about it, so we'll get that resolved and onwards and upwards with that. Saturday was an awesome race. There was some rain, but mostly dry, so we were putting down some pretty fast lap times. Superdog was 1:34. We were easily running 1:31s and just having to pedal the car to not superdog it. And that takes a little bit of the fun out of it when you're just coasting a lot through the track. But Pacific Raceways is a bit of a scary track. It doesn't have the best runoff, and especially when it gets wet, it just turns into a metal bender. I mean, there's some pretty bad accidents there. I think 3 or 4 cars got written off. And fortunately, nobody was seriously injured, but last year at this same race. And actually, when we were at the Ridge, a racer died at Pacific in an incident. So it's a good reminder it's not without risk. But that track in particular is, I wouldn't say it's completely unsafe, but it's a little less safe than some of the other tracks we race at. So you gotta have respect for it. But anyway, Saturday went great. We were shooing for 3rd, which is where we thought we were going to wind up, and then finally racing, which is sister brother team to Purple Haze. They had some mechanical issues, and they they had to do some unexpected pitting, and so unfortunately they gave up second place to us. And so that's not how we want to get second, but we've given up we've given up plenty of first place finishes that way, so is what it is. But it was a good race with everybody, and some of the other really competitive teams had guest drivers in the cars, so they weren't super competitive this weekend, so it made it pretty easy for us to get on the podium Saturday. But all in all, it was really fun and great. That's the most consecutive rain driving I've ever done, so really good experience, and especially at a track with that much standing water, it keeps you on your toes. Yeah, other than that, weekend went great, and we all had a lot of fun, and looking forward to Portland in a couple weeks for the next Lucky Dog race. And I'm looking over here to the left.
You don't remember the spot?
I do. Yeah, it's right there.
I remember you saying that you remember the spot.
I remember. It's like a steel trap.